Так, я думаю, будемо починати. Якщо там ще хтось приєднується, нехай приєднується. Сьогодні, доброго дня ще раз усім. Сьогодні наша остання онлайн-зустріч перед безпосередньо виставкою Gulfood. Ще раз, можливо, пройдемось по всім етапам підготовки. Поговоримо щодо організаційних якихось питань, якщо у вас є такі питання. Крім того, нагадую, що ще є декілька днів для того, щоб організувати індивідуальні зустрічі з нашим міжнародним консультантом Джимом Фіцпатріком, тому що не так вже багато днів залишилося. І
Да. Ты мне что-то хорошее сказать, ты не можешь. Ой.
Так, будь ласка, так, виключайте мікрофони, щоб не заважати іншим слухати. Так, збилася з думки, вибачте. Тож, це останній вебінар. Всі інші зміни щодо будь-яких вимог, все інше, ми будемо завжди публікувати в групі. І далі я передаю слово Джиму. Вже після тренінгу ми поговоримо щодо організації всіх інших питань.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third session. I hope you're all keeping well. Today, we're going to talk about at the fair, really. This is Ready to Go is the name of this session. So today, we're going to talk about what we can do at the fair to make our time more successful and to make it more enjoyable. Part of today is new. Part of today is a recap of the things we've spoken about over the past couple of weeks. Again, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them. If you've got any comments, feel free to make them. Always welcome. I know that these webinars are rather quiet, let's say, a single voice most of the time, but you are welcome to participate if you want to do so. There are three types of support that ITC's been offering, and we continue to offer this up to the start of the fair. First of all, help with logistics and planning, which I think hopefully most people are now well aware of and well on top of. Coaching calls, of which we haven't had that many so far, but you're very welcome to make an appointment. If you've got a 10-minute question or if you've got a 1-hour question, all welcome. Don't hesitate. If you're looking for some help or advice or lists of people to talk to at the fair. There's also help at the fair and help with appointments. So if you do want to make an appointment, make it now. You can type into the chat privately, or you can make it the appointment separately. So let's start off we'll start by looking back, if you like, at some of the topics that we've discussed over the past week or so. Let me just underline that it's really helpful that if you do look for some particular coaching or assistance, which by the way is 100% confidential, none of your business will be discussed with anyone else. But if you do look for coaching or assistance, try and have a good idea of what you're looking for. I mean, if you want to talk to me and say, Jim, what kind of people should we look for at the fair? Or who should we talk to at the fair? It's very helpful to do that because then we can give you much clearer answers. We had a couple of good conversations recently where people came with very particular questions and we were able to give them very specific answers to those. So if you want to do it, feel free. I'll be looking forward to talking to you. So we'll start off by talking about the stand. So today will take us around about 1 hour. We'll start off by talking about the stand, and here you can see on your screens, I hope, the graphic of the stand. A couple of things we need to be particularly notice on this stand is that the type of presentation booths, the space, areas for meetings, and we'll talk about those in a moment. don't forget to familiarize yourself with the layout of the center. This is a really good opportunity to see so many different businesses and foods. And, you know, you can look at businesses from a lot of different angles. You can look at companies as potential people to sell to. That's one area. You can also look at them as competitors. That's another area, and we all learn from our competitors. And you can look at other businesses, maybe not even in the same sector as you're in, as opportunities to learn. So I always think when we go to a trade fair, we certainly look to sell, and we look to improve our marketing, but we also look to learn. And we shouldn't miss the opportunity to learn about how the business is working and to learn about how things are operating in other countries. Throughout the fair, there's opportunity. I mean, I think I've said to you previously that the green halls are really interesting. These are the kind of world food halls, and there you'll see a huge variety from different countries, and you will get a truly global perspective on what's happening in the food business. But other areas too. So there's an extensive area for beverages. So for some people that will be quite interesting, not to be neglected, and it's very close to us, these blue halls here. There's also an area for food supplements, functional foods and healthy foods over in this section here, the purple section. So if you're thinking about either your customers or if you're thinking about your competitors, make sure to familiarize yourself with where they're likely to be. Now, I find that on the one hand, it's really important to have a list of stands you want to visit. It's not important, it's essential. But on the other hand, there's also a lot to be learned simply by walking around the fair and keeping your eyes and ears open. So that's the hall. Within the Sheikh Zayed halls, we're in hall number 2, and we're over here, quite a good location. Around us, I've had a look at what's around the ITC stand, and we have big country stands. We have, I think, Mexico just directly facing, which is quite interesting, and a range of other countries, which will definitely attract visitors. So there'll be a lot of people passing. Hopefully there'll be a lot of people that you've made appointments with and will come to see you anyway, but there'll also be a lot of people passing. So we have to give some thought to how we might attract their interest to come to the stand and have a look at your products. I think when we look at the stand, the design is pretty good. I think it's an attractive design. It's pretty clear that it is Ukraine. And I think generally, apart from the fact that we should realize that the space is quite tight. I mean, we have to be realistic about that. That's the downside. The upside is that we have much more companies on the stand. So we need to be realistic about how we manage the stand, how we manage our cooperation, and how we manage attracting people onto the stand. That really is an important issue. It's really important that we cooperate together, that all the companies pay due respect to each other and enable benefits from each company, so whether they're your competitors or your friends, same thing applies. If we look, then we have, I think, a really interesting range of businesses on the stand. There's every reason to believe that these businesses will be very attractive. And what you'll find is, and we certainly found this at Anuga, and it was really interesting at Anuga in Germany in October, that someone would come to talk about one product and they'd end up talking about another. So we had people coming to talk about walnuts and they ended up talking about oil, and they ended up talking about garlic products, they ended up talking about fruit products. And that was really interesting. So I think good cooperation, referring people to each other is a really good thing. And I'd recommend that, you know, if someone comes to you, has a chat with you about your products, and you think there's another product on the stand they might be interested in, tell them. And everyone should, if everyone does that, we'll have quite a nice crossover between the different companies, and we'll all benefit by that. So that's really important. As we've said before, let's not forget that you're representing not only yourselves, but the Ukrainian food business and indeed the country. And that's really important. And if we look at the range of products, of course, we've an enormous broad range of interesting products. And if I look at these products, so many of them could be described as really hot products in the mind of the consumer at the moment. Things like nuts, berry fruit in general, nuts, berries, really interesting products, supplements, products which consumers are interested in. Therefore, we should expect some good attention at the stand. There are some realities we've got to face, and forgive me if I go through these again because they are important and they can damage the reputation. So if we think of the stand as a international trade center stand, we have that strong brand. It's the Ukrainian stand, so we have that strong brand, and we need to protect those brands. And then we have each of the exhibiting companies' brands. And we protect those by essentially following the rules. Now, who knows how strictly these rules will be enforced, but we do know for fact that whether the rules are enforced or not, we know that visitors, buyers, will look at a stand and note whether they want to go to that stand. And I think it's important, therefore, to stick by the rules. We're talking about the wearing of masks, as uncomfortable as it may be. Although I must say, I found at Anuga, after about half a day, I was completely used to the mask. In fact, for the following days, it would feel strange not to have the mask on. So you quickly get used to that, and it doesn't bother you and it doesn't interfere with business. Secondly, social distancing, and then areas of physical contact. So it's very important in this situation to follow one of the basic things about selling. One of those basic things is to try to make the person you're selling to comfortable. Comfortable with the discussion, comfortable with the environment. And that's the way to make them start to engage and become comfortable with the product and with yourself as the person selling that product. So make sure to observe, first of all, the rules, things like this sneezing or coughing etiquette, reduced physical contact. These are all pretty obvious things, sadly, in the world that we've been living in for the past 2 years. But also keep a close eye on the reaction of your customer to those things so that the customer feels comfortable. So some people will be naturally quite cautious. Other people that come to visit will not be so cautious. And it's up to us to kind of observe that. But we should not tolerate anyone on the stand breaking these basic rules, because that will only damage the reputation of everyone on the stand and the organizations that have paid for it. So we do need to be careful and cautious on those things. And part of that is good preparation. So I know you've heard this before. I'm saying it again. I'm saying it because it is so important. And it's really about good salesmanship. It's about good business. You'll be pretty well aware now of the things that the organizers have put in place to make Gulfood work. And let's be clear, without these things, there would be no Gulfood. And therefore we should do our best to cooperate with that. So the thing that really affects us here is to print the passes at home and bring them with you. All of the other things are really basically sticking to the kind of basic rules that we have become used to in a lot of places. Using sanitizer, we know that the organizers have spent a lot of time and money in putting in contactless transactions, very good air conditioning, pre-packing of food products and other things. So we should cooperate with those. It's not a matter of them forcing us to do something. It's very simply a matter of there would be no Gulfood if we don't follow these rules. So we need to pay due respect to the fact that they have done this and to protect our own businesses and our own brand. There are certain rules on the stand, and I'm mentioning these because these reflect on experiences that we've had previously, and these are non-negotiable rules on the ITC sponsored stand. And I will go through them one by one. once more. First of all, you can only use the booth, the seating that's been provided on the stand. So please adhere to that. Don't be taking the tables from the middle and putting them over by your stand. Don't be taking chairs from the meeting tables and using them at your booth. If you have any problem with the setup of the stand, don't complain to your neighbors. Don't complain. Talk to the organizers. They're the people that can do something about it. Don't take your own actions. Let's make sure that this thing works. As I was saying, good cooperation and helping each other is non-negotiable. Keep your booth occupied at all times. That makes common sense, business sense. Someone should be there. Make sure it's business visitors only, insofar as you can. In other words, passers-by, old friends, great to see them, but go somewhere and have a coffee with them. Don't leave a lot of people standing around when they're not doing business. And finally, and very importantly, there should be no alcohol, food, or media consumption on the stand. So please adhere to that, because that is highly unprofessional. And what we're looking for here, and what your customers are looking for, is a professional approach. In terms of opening times, I think you have all of this. The opening times have changed once or twice slightly. We notice on the website that the closing time has come in from 7 until 6. Originally, the opening time was 11, now it's 10. These are the opening times for visitors, by the way. So in the morning, you need to be there before 10. You need to get ready, set up, and be ready for visitors in the morning. Passes, print them at home. You must wear them at all times. They're not transferable, and they will require valid identification. So as always, carry your valid ID with you. I think that they will very strictly enforce this rule about sharing passes and valid identification. It's no big deal, but it's important to remember that. I'm going to talk about working on the stand now a little bit. I'm going to talk about the kind of mistakes that people often make, and I'm going to mention some things where I think there are opportunities to do a good job. So it's really important that we keep the stand well presented, that people have a good business attitude. I'm just contrasting. If you look at the two pictures, the man in the top is clearly ready to go. The man in the bottom, I'm not sure, he's more interested in his phone than he is in doing business. That's from a trade fair 4 years ago, actually. And it was really interesting to see how these two selling similar products, but how the different approach really made a difference to how people stopped. So a good attitude, good quality samples, and a good presentation is really essential. If we look at our stand back at Anuga, a couple of points to note. Some people are really professional. They look professional. They're what I call present. They're there, they're at the trade show, they're looking for opportunities. Others are absent, looking at something else, looking at their phones, looking at their computers, listening to the radio. These things are really essential. People who are passing by must feel that you're interested. If you're not interested in your business, why should they be? And most people would say, well, Jim, look, we know these things. We know, we're professional people, we know these things. But it is surprising when you go to a trade fair, it is a long time to be working on a stand. It is surprising how people forget some of the basics, how they get distracted. And I remember standing on this stand at Anuga and watching some buyers of products, nuts and hazelnuts in particular, walk right by without even recognizing, simply because they thought that the people on the booth were occupied with something else. So bear that in mind. Think about your organization on the stand. Think about your professional attitude. And we all have to think about how the stand looks. Not cluttered, not confusing, an inviting, interesting place. Think of it as if it was a shop. What would bring someone into a shop? Certainly not the kind of confusion that we see in this picture. And that was during the fair. Maybe I'm a bit unfair taking that picture as an example because most of the time the stand was good, but it's an example of what can happen and business can be missed. And this thing of being as I say, being present, being there, being in the moment is really the thing that can invite someone to the stand. If you catch the eye of someone walking by, they may be the customer you've been looking for. We just don't know. That's the excitement of a trade fair. You really don't know that you might meet some of the best opportunities you've ever met. But one thing is for sure, people won't stop. If the people on the stand, like the guys in the picture, are chatting to each other, looking at their phones, back to the aisle, they're literally, there's nothing about that picture that says, come and talk to us, we're open for business. Everything about that picture says, you know what, we're not really that interested. We're just more interested in chatting to each other. So just bear that in mind. I mean, a trade fair is more of it's more like a marathon than a sprint, if you know what I mean. It does need a lot of engagement over a long period of time. And you're hoping, in a way, you're hoping that the right client comes by. Now you decide in a way if the right client comes by or not, because you invite them, you contact them, you let them know. But there's also this random opportunity that the right buyer might walk by and you might miss them. So bear that in mind. It's all about being professional, really. On the stand again, talking about badges, you've seen this before. Pre-register online, print your badge. You can pick up a lanyard for around your neck or a badge holder from the information desks. I won't dwell on that too much. We talk about the samples. And again, consider that there's no self-service on samples. I think that's the key thing. So tasting is fine, but it must be individual tasting. Same thing with brochures. You can show them, but you must hand them out. And this is to reduce contact. Great idea is to use a QR code. I think we saw one there on one of the stands. Yeah, I think I mentioned that to you before, but this QR code here. So this code took visitors directly to the website of the company, which is a great idea and well worth doing. And as I was showing you, I think back in workshop number 1, you can get a QR code for free online at this website, qrcodegenerator.com. It's interesting, and I think it's a pretty good idea. Print it out, put it on maybe on your countertop. It can be small too. You don't need a large QR code, and that will guide the person to your website. Even while you're talking to them, you can guide them and talk them through the products. Very modern way that anyone who's uncomfortable with or worried, let's say, about physical contact during the fair, and there will be a lot of people with that in mind, they'll be very reassured if you give them the opportunity to do that kind of things. Now, going back to samples, let's just have a quick look at samples again. So samples definitely are on. You should bring some kind of samples. In terms of the rules, we need to remember that visitors need access to hand sanitizers. So it would be a good idea to bring some or to buy some. Secondly, as I've mentioned, individual samples. There should be a food sampling area on the stand. I don't think that will be very heavily enforced, particularly if you're talking about small samples of products, but it's something to bear in mind. and make sure that the areas, if you have a food sampling, make sure that areas are sanitized afterwards. Now, at the moment, I think that this trade fair will probably go very smoothly given the conditions. A lot of pressure. Get this right. Just bear with me one moment. I have a slight issue with my microphone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Everything's fine.
Excellent. Okay. Sorry that I'm getting now and again. There's a slight problem with my microphones. Just bear with me as that happens. We've been talking about samples, so just be careful about the rules. They are very serious about the rules, and their business is at stake. If this doesn't work, they won't get an opportunity to hold later trade shows during this year. So I think it's important that we pay attention to the rules, but you will learn as you're there how strictly they will be enforced. I'm not saying that you should break the rules. I'm just saying observe how they're being enforced and applied so that we get practical solutions. Don't miss an opportunity to allow a customer to try your product if you have the product there to be tried. So when it comes to brochures and handouts, strongly recommend using QR code to take people to your website or to a brochure. So you could put a brochure, for example, onto a file sharing website and put a QR code to that, and they could download it there and then standing talking to you. Secondly, you could use your social media. So you could put a brochure or a document onto Facebook, for example, and your customer, while they're talking to you, could go to Facebook on their phone and download that. But then you know they've got it. And I'll tell you something else. Most brochures, most physical hard copy brochures never make it out of the hotel room of the visitor, because international visitors get so many, you pick up so many things, they get so many things handed to them that at the end of the day, they've got to make a decision. And what happens is most of it gets left in the hotel room. Soft copies, social media, QR codes, and photographs never get left behind. So think about using them. And if you are going to hand out hard copies, which is, it's still possible, make sure that they are one per visitor and that you hand them out and not that they're picked from a pile. This is also to protect everyone on the stand from falling ill. I mean, it would be really bad news to fall ill whilst at the Gulfood fair, not only because you've missed the fair, but because the difficulties then with testing and all the rest of it on the journey home. Those are some of the basic things. I want to talk to you then about presenting your products. So the questions we need to think about when we talk about how to set up our stand are, what are the things that will make someone stop to have a look? And how do we get our message across? And it is really one of the big arts of a trade fair. Here's an example of a stand. This is a stand at Anuga. This is an Italian food company. And they're faced with the idea that what are the big trends that our customers are looking for? And they said, okay, let's just put it on 2 huge signs on the front of our stand. And they put up sustainability and they put up traceability. 2 huge things for buyers these days. This company is very successful. As you can see, it's been around for 200 years. And they get that message. So I took that picture because I feel that there's a lesson in that. Put our messages out there, put them out simply and straightforward. And we should make sure we display our products well. One of the things about displaying the products is, I think, to keep your display simple. And here are some examples. Some of these are from Anuga, some of them are from Biofak. And what you can see in each of these cases is that whether it's a packed product or whether it's a commodity, the pictures in the bottom, they've decided, let's keep this simple. And this picture says, here's our product. We have 3 products in the range. Here's our packaging, and here's the natural ingredients that go into the product. Very simple display. This one here, similar situation. They look like a range of nut butters, and they've done the same thing. But notice that they haven't cluttered up with too much stuff. And I'll show you an example of the opposite a little bit later on. So think about, first of all, this idea that a little bit less on a stand is more. And if we look at the facility available to us, we can see that we don't have a huge amount of space. Using it well is important. Don't use your booth or the display case. Don't use it as a warehouse for samples. Use it as a shop window to show what you can do in your business and to show the quality of your products. Second factor is, think about doing something that will attract attention. So this on the left is some interesting displays of garlic products from a Ukrainian company at Anuga. And I mean, garlic is a product we all know, but you display the different products in a different way and it becomes a little bit eye-catching. And a lot of people were drawn to that stand as a result. On the right-hand side is from also a company that was supported by the International Trade Center at the Biofak fair, I believe. And they have hazelnuts. Now, there's not an awful lot to display if you're supplying hazelnuts. So they put them into these wooden trays, put some brochures around the side, and you got quite an attractive display. So think about it, if there's a way that you can make your product stand out a little bit, something that looks a little bit different, something that looks a little bit attractive. Give that some thought. I can tell you it really works. And it doesn't need you will see stands where they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on making displays that will attract. You don't need to do really expensive things. I mean, in this case, the garlic products, some jars, they're nice jars, but they're still just jars with the product in it, became very attractive. In this case, some oval trays made from some nice timber and samples of the nuts in them. And that worked really well. Now, they're just examples, perhaps not the ideal example for Gulfood because it's open and you don't want people just picking out the samples, but you could have that maybe with a glass cover on it, or even with a cling film cover on it so that they couldn't be picked out. The jars, of course, perfect for Gulfood. Here's another example. This is from Biofak Fair back in 2017. This is an example where someone has, so this guy has basically 2 products, this oil product here and the powder. And what he's done is he's taken all of his ingredients and he's taken samples of the ingredients and lined them up in a way that attracts attention. And these are, of course, interesting because they're quite unusual products. These are products from African countries, but they got attention. People would come over and say, well, what is that? This is what it is, by the way, is a Moringa Pod from an African tree. It's a medicinal product. And this is the powder made from it, which is also used as a food ingredient. And then these leaves are a product called Kinkeliba, which is used as a medicinal supplement too. But the point is, if we can find some way to put not too much product into a case like this, and this case is quite similar to the ones that we'll have at Gulfood, it can be very attractive. And it might even be a good idea to, before you go, do a little rehearsal, see how you can lay it out, see how you can present the products. And just all the time thinking about this idea of what do you want to show? You want to show some form of innovation. You want to show something that attracts the eye, and you want to reflect the ideas of quality, food safety. I'm sure there are other things too, but those are some examples, and those are some of the things you can do. have a look at these. Here you have, again, we're talking about displaying products. Here you have very simple display. This is from Anuga. We can see some of our colleagues in the picture. This is a US walnut exporting company, Carrier Family Farms, and they've simply put out some nice quality walnuts on the one side in shell, and then some walnut meats on the other side. Again, relatively simple business cards. It does attract attention. What's really good, of course, is color. If you can introduce some color onto your stand, that will attract attention. You can see here, this is a stand again from a business, a food business, which is, I believe they're based in Turkey, and they've a range of products. They've herbs, tropical fruits, dried and fresh, and then they've a range of supplements and extracts. And you can see how the color of the fruits and the color of the dried fruits attracts the eye. Again, not too many products. You know, it's a relatively simple display. Similarly, down here on the left-hand side, this guy was from Pakistan. Very professional guy. You can see by him, he's ready for business. He's very professionally approached. He's taking a sip of water when I took that picture, but there you are. Again, relatively modest display, not too many products, something just to catch the eye. So we can use color. We can go by this principle of less is more. Can be very helpful when we set up. So avoid clutter. That's really important when you look at arranging a stand. So here's a stand. This was actually a client of mine. We had to reorganize this case on the left-hand side, as you can imagine. So the company had just put lots of samples into the case, and they were really, it was a bit of a mess, to be honest. They were using the cabinet to store samples. It looked unprofessional. It didn't look like a food business at all. It certainly didn't give the values of food safety, quality. It gave completely opposite message. And I've included it here as an example. Now, even on the other picture, you can see, and this business is the one I mentioned earlier that had some very interesting ideas for display. This is the product on the right. It's a really good garlic product. And then some really interesting ways of displaying just garlic in jars and so on, but maybe a little bit too much. And that it's very difficult to see the product from the other things. So think about that. Think about something maybe a little bit unusual, not putting too much, making sure that your display is not too cluttered, making sure that it looks professional, making sure that you have something that catches the eye. And that's good things for catching the eye is a nice way of displaying the product, like these jars here. Use of color, very effective. You can see the use of color here. And of course, with apples, you have an opportunity to show color all the time. And something, if you have something that's unique or very unusual, it is highly effective in attracting attention. All of these companies, by the way, are relatively small companies. None of them spent huge money on preparing for the fair, but they did the work to get themselves right. Okay, so that's about display, and that's the main thing. Where should we be at this point? Well, it's the 2nd of February. We're talking about 10 days. So flights, connections, hotels, you should have a written plan for the fair. Really think about writing down your objectives, writing down the businesses you want to see, the businesses you want to visit. That's really important. Makes your life so much easier when you get there. You should have decided what samples you're going to bring by now. You should have decided how you're going to pack them. And someone asked a really good question recently when they asked, what documents do I need to bring the products in? It depends on your product, of course, but for most people, you should have obviously your own business card, label the products and make sure that the label on the samples shows the name of your company. Make sure that the product it's clear what it is if that's possible. Now, it's not always possible. If it's a walnut, it's pretty obvious it's a walnut. But if it was a powdered walnut, it wouldn't be obvious what it is. So a good idea is to have with you a product specification or a product sheet that you can reach. You should have them anyway for the fair. Just have one that you can reach in the event that a customs officer wanted to have a look at the samples that you're bringing in. Your brochures, of course, will also support the story. I don't anticipate any problem, but bring the documents with you. Another good thing that you could have, but this is necessary, particularly if you have a product which is not clear what it is a commercial invoice that simply shows the value of the product. So an invoice for the samples, it might be $10, $15 invoice. And you can bring that in order to establish the value of your products. Probably not needed, good to have it. Think about how you're going to record the meetings. We talked about that last time. Whether you'll put it in a notebook or whether you'll use the Excel spreadsheet, which I think has been circulated to everyone now. It's a very good way. It's also very helpful in order to communicate back to ITC who's visited you. And you can communicate that. It's confidential as well, of course. You can communicate that back, and that's important for ITC in developing trade shows and measuring the performance at the trade show. You should by now have emailed all your customers and anyone that you've ever had a conversation with about your products, really. It's a good idea to email people that might be at Gulfood, and it's a good idea to email people that you think may not be at Gulfood. It's all good promotion. It all speaks well for your business. Make sure that you have your social media updated. If you don't have social media, why not start a company Facebook page, a company LinkedIn page, WhatsApp, whatever it is that you think could be effective. Start a page now. Put up there your first post. Here we are on our way to Gulfood. Here's the samples we're bringing. Did you know we're a high quality food export business? And then you can use your social media at the fair, as well as using it before the fair and afterwards. It'd be a really good time because you've got a good story to tell about the travel to Gulfood. Traveling to a trade fair during a pandemic is a great story, and now is a good time to tell that story. And you can tell that to everyone by putting it up on social media. Work on the exhibitor lists. Check the exhibitor lists. Let's have a quick look. So here's the Gulfood website. You can go in and it's a searchable website. So you can put in whatever you want. I put in supplements earlier, just out of interest. I was doing a bit of research and I'm looking at what would come up. So you can see quite a lot of businesses come up. Let's do that again. So this is quite a broad search, and that's what I'd suggest. Put in a relatively broad search. So what do we get when we put in supplements? Okay, so we get Flow Trading, DMK Baby, Jabico BV. Let's look at this one. So it takes you to the overview of the company. Where are they? Okay, they're in the UAE. It's part of a group. They have brands. Let's have a look at their products. Sauces, it's a wide range of products. So let's go back to the overview. Let's have a look at their website. So now we've done a search based on one word. We've found a company. Let's see if there is something of interest there. So they're doing a lot of packaged products, big manufacturers. We search for supplements. So let's go down here and we find supplements in their product list. And we'll see the supplements that they make. So active tablets, effervescent tablets, magnesium, something called immunity powder, which is intriguing. So these are supplements and medicines, might be an interesting client, perhaps for someone who can supply the ingredients, or perhaps for someone who can supply the products private label packed. And it is quite easy. I mean, you go into this and we'll have a look for another one. Let's have a look for walnuts again. Important product for some of our exhibitors. So here you get walnuts. So we get walnut companies from all over the world. So there's some from Chile. There's one from France. Let's have a look at that one just for curiosity. So this is a very famous French cooperative, Unicoque, which makes walnuts and walnut kernels and paste. Is Unicoque a customer for Ukrainian exporters? It's #1 in France for nuts. Well, it definitely is for walnuts. And there we can see the story of the business. It's a cooperative. Let's have a look at their products, hazelnuts and walnuts. Let's have a look at their walnuts. Quite a nice website. So it has, people in the walnut business will know what this means. They've Lara variety in their walnut orchards, large size and sweetness. And actually, this is a very interesting business because the walnuts that these guys pack, it's a cooperative. I think there's about 500 members. The products that they pack are really premium walnuts. These are products which make prices 30–40% above prices in a lot of countries, including higher prices than Californian or Chilean walnuts. That'd be an interesting one to visit. So they're mostly cooperatives I'm seeing here. But you can see that the power of this search, from this you can pick which businesses you might be interested to visit. Here's some interesting products. Middle Eastern cuisine that uses walnuts. This is a business that uses walnuts as an ingredient. They might be interesting to visit. They would be a customer. They've got their presentation in German, but there you can, the wonders of Google, we can translate it very easily. So this is a business that supplies foodstuffs and ingredients, and one of their ingredients is walnuts. And there's their website. Again, in German, let's translate it. And so you can go on. So the idea of finding exhibitors to visit is pretty straightforward. Use the website, and don't forget, there's an interesting buyer there, Aydin. This is the biggest buyer of nuts and dried fruits in Turkey and one of the biggest distributors. If you're in the dried fruits business, if you're in the supplements business, if you're in the nuts business, go and see these people. Very, very big buyer. Okay, so what I'm saying is that you've got the opportunity by using the website to search exhibitors that would be relevant for your business. Secondly, you've got your existing contacts and your existing networks to invite people. Thirdly, you've got your social media. Those are 3 areas of great strength to help you attract people to visit you at your stand. The 4th factor is us. If you want to use the International Trade Center over the coming 2 weeks or so to give you support, to make appointments, to find contacts, arrange a meeting. Again, I want to come back to the idea of the plan and strongly recommending that you have a trade fair plan And your plan should have your general objectives. So what do we want to do? Do we want to find buyers? What kind of buyers do we want to find? Do we want to learn? What do we want to learn? What questions do we want to answer? And then on the other hand, there's the communication objectives, simply being there, increasing the awareness of your brand, increasing your customers' interest in your brand, collecting market information. These are two very important aspects of making the most of the opportunity at the trade fair. Second part of the plan is the more practical stuff. So about your brochures, all of the things we've spoken about, brochures, samples, handouts, soft copies, hard copies, how are you going to present the samples? Third aspect of the plan is making appointments. Who are we going to get to visit us on the one hand, and who will we visit on the other? So on the one hand, we have those tools I've mentioned, emails, existing customers, people we've previously met at trade fairs, anyone we know in the business. Then we've got the use of social media to contact more generally customers and others. It's a good time, by the way, if you've been to a trade fair before and you still have all the business cards, get them out, whether you did business with those people or not, and send them some messages. And if you've been to a trade fair before and you did record your meetings on an Excel spreadsheet, like we would suggest, you could now go to that spreadsheet and just pick out all the email addresses and fire the emails away. So that's also one of the reasons that it makes it useful to have a good record. That's in a soft copy so that you yourself or someone else in your organization can use that to contact people next year at the next trade fair, or in October, maybe at Cial. That you can use the contacts from Gulfood to talk to people again. The other side of it is, who will we visit? Which stands will we go to? And when we get there, what will we observe? What will we talk about? What will we look for? And those are things that you can see some discussion on during the last couple of workshops. Check your resources. These are some of the basic things. Let's not forget business cards, samples, price lists, product sheets. You don't need me to tell you these things. It's a reminder. The key thing I would say, just pay some attention, if you will, to recording the meetings and how you're going to do that. Think about how you're going to display your products. Really don't wait till you get there. Do a little bit of thinking about it before you get there. Try it out. Take the area of your booth, mark it out on a desk or on a table somewhere, and start to place products in it and see how they look. Take a photograph of it, stand back, see what you think. Try and get it right. And remember, you've got the two surfaces. You've got the inside and the outside. So we talk about social media. So social media is one of the most irritating, annoying things on the planet. But social media is also one of the best ways to get your business message out to customers, out to people who might be customers, even out to competitors. So it's cheap, it's fast, it's flexible. Prepare your story, put it on your website, put it on your social media. Don't just tell them you're going to be at Gulfood. Tell them you're going to be at Gulfood and you're going to have something interesting to talk about. Whatever it is, your products, your prices, whatever is the way that you sell, please get it out there onto social media, because that's going to attract attention. And bear in mind, everyone going to the fair is in the same position. Everyone is going and saying, who am I going to meet? What am I looking for? If you give them the guidance to come to you, you may well just end up contacting someone who's really interesting for the future. You can't lose. There's no investment in social media, a little bit of time and no more. A few basics then on how to work on the fair. Keep your booth attended. Listen well. That's the messages I would, from these 9, the things I would really focus on would be: make sure the booth is attended. Be present. Don't hide behind your laptop. Stay off your phone. Be there. Be present. Be ready to do business. Listen well and greet well. So listen well. If you recall, we talked about deciding if someone that you meet is a person that you can do business with, is a decision maker, is an interesting person, is someone that can be beneficial to your business. That's listening well. And listening well too is listening how they're responding. You're telling them about the product. Are they engaged? Are they interested? Are they looking over their shoulder? Are they looking at their watch? Are they thinking about going for a cup of coffee, or are they there with you? And you've got to observe that and decide whether or not you want to keep that discussion going or close it out. Maybe let them go for their coffee. You know, so you keep the thing in a way that you're using your time to the best advantage. Don't forget, first impressions count. It's an old thing to say, but you know, if you look the part, you have a better chance. Look professional. Think about your appearance, think about your body language, think about the way you present yourself, as well as the way you present your products. And that can have huge impact on how people will recall you and they'll recall your business. We're going to run through some aspects on communication. And most of this we've talked about before, but I'm just going to go through this quickly. And this is more just to remind you, maybe to have a look back at some of the slides, but even more than that, just to think about what you're going to do and how you're going to work at the fair. Firstly, think about a good day at the fair, how you can stay at the stand, meet people, go out, visit other exhibitors. Maybe late morning, early afternoon is the best time for that, and come back to the stand and meet some more people, prepare for the next day. If you want to arrange a meeting with someone, pretty good time is early in the morning. 10:30 is quite good if they're prepared to meet you at that time, because you won't have too many passers-by. You won't be missing people walking by at that stage. Or just after lunchtime is also a good time. Good time to go out to see other stands. Again, early in the morning when there's not many people about, or better, early in the afternoon. Really good time to go out and have a look at other exhibitor stands. We talked about how you can be successful. We talked about the various factors that contribute to that: setting goals, having a checklist, dress for success, be present. I cannot say that often enough. Preparing the stand, as we've talked about this afternoon, making sure it's not too cluttered. Good greetings, smile, use people's names if you know them, listen. Make sure that someone who's waiting doesn't walk away by just acknowledging them, particularly if you've got 2 or 3 people waiting at your stand, which would be great. I hope you do. And keep the stand organized. Don't allow friends, competitors, passers-by to hang around your stand, because that will discourage some of the more interested buyers. I talked about listening. I talked about finding out what your visitor is looking for, finding out what's their position. Are they a decision maker? Only when you know that that person is a buyer, a competitor, a passerby, or a decision maker, should you start to really engage in the conversation. There's absolutely no harm giving out the information. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm talking about is the best use of your time. So you be open, you listen, you talk, but you could spend a lot of time chatting to people who themselves are just killing time, just wandering around whilst they wait for the real appointment that they want to go to. Be prepared, think about the questions that you'll be asked. And I think the things that I would expect at Gulfood at the moment are The harvest position, the supply chain is always a good question. Quality and quality guarantees, prices, order size. Shipping time is a big issue now for businesses because shipping from China, for example, or from Asia generally, the shipping time has doubled or even trebled in some cases, whereas the shipping time from Ukraine is pretty much the same as it was about 2 years ago. If we're talking about markets in the Middle East, if we're talking about markets in Western Europe. They will ask about who you're dealing with now. You've got to judge that one, whether you want to answer that or not. Do you want to give someone the name of your clients? You've got to judge that one carefully. If they ask you about references, they will, again, probably better to wait to follow up and then give a reference rather than giving away information about who your clients are, but never refuse to give a reference. Obviously, all the businesses, I think, traveling have plenty of customers that they can use as references, and people will ask about visiting because they will have to, if they're serious, they will have to come and see you in your place of business, in your factory, your plantation in the country. And that will be something that people, especially at the moment, will be curious about with all the reports in the news media. So be prepared to discuss those things and answer those questions. Most people would have a pretty positive view of Ukraine, I think, in the food business in terms of how much food Ukraine produces and exports. So you've a good story to talk about, but expect these kind of questions. Also, be prepared for questions about markets. And the big topics in markets at the moment are food safety and quality, supply chains, how the pandemic was managed. In the food sector, new product applications are a big talking point, particularly if they involve healthy food products, supplements, if they involve new applications. You can see some pictures there, new applications for walnuts and hazelnuts, oils, and other products. Make sure you have your knowledge ready, that you are able to talk about these kinds of factors. Your knowledge will give your customer confidence, and if they've got confidence, they'll do business. So it's important to keep yourself informed. And I think I mentioned my habit is I write down 5 or 6 really important factors on a card, and I put that card in my pocket, and I have those at the forefront of my mind when I'm talking about the products. And, bear in mind, there's an old saying, I don't know how this will translate, but there's an old saying that a little knowledge can go a long way if you use it well. So have your facts and figures ready and be ready to use them. I've put in a slide with a few emerging trends, things just to think about, which I think I've also shown you before. But more importantly, I think, is to bear in mind some of the impact of the pandemic. And you're going to find, if you've been to a trade fair 3 years ago, you're going to find that the questions asked this year will be different. People will start to talk about supply chain strengths and weaknesses. They'll start to talk about dependence on a single origin. For example, if they were buying Californian walnuts, Turkish hazelnuts, if they were buying fruit from China, they'll be talking about the high dependence on some origins, and they'll be talking about the risk of long supply chains. They'll also be talking about transparency. They'll be talking about sustainability, like the photo I showed you earlier. These are really big factors now, and it's really important. So I think one thing that we should remember is that for supply to Middle East, for supply to Western Europe, Ukraine has tremendous advantages. Apart from the ability to produce, apart from the quality of the processing, simply the location is a huge advantage over suppliers from the United States, suppliers from China, suppliers from South America. Just bear that in mind. It's a pretty obvious thing, and people will be aware of it. So it's a great subject to bring up. Okay, I'll leave you these. We've talked about these before. I wanted to highlight these again. How to approach other exhibitors' stands. How to visit them. And I would just say, have a look again at that. And when you do go to see stands, like anything you do in business, do it with the purpose. So go to the stands and look the way that they present their products. Look at how they sell them. What do they highlight? Can you talk to them? If they're a competitor, can you talk to them? How do they do their marketing? What are the trends they're seeing? They'll be very interested to hear your comments. So have something ready that you can talk about, and you can glean a lot of information. You can gather so much information at a trade fair from competitors. And remember the different objectives we talked about, not only selling, not only finding new customers, but also learning. Really important factors. Follow up, it's essential. Before you go to the fair, let's think about how you're going to follow up, who'll follow up, and what tools you'll use to do that follow-up. It's really very, very important. I think I've mentioned that in each of the 3 webinars that we've done, and it's important. And there are now various tools available, and some suggestions, and this spreadsheet. This is the one we did for Anuga. The Gulfood one is available, has been circulated. I'd highly recommend it. But whatever you decide to do have a good way to record the meetings. You can imagine you get this spreadsheet. It's September. You're going to Cial Trade Fair in Paris. You see the email addresses. You go in here, you copy all the email addresses, drop them into an email. Every single one on your list gets an email immediately. Could be a really handy thing to have, and it's a great way to store that information. Now, also in here, I wanted to remind you about presenting your company, about doing it well, about having a pitch, having your story straight, so you know what you want to say to customers, making sure that you have structure. This is about being professional. Being able to present your company in a professional manner is important for selling. Having a simple, short presentation, maybe 1 minute, where you have an opening, a middle, an end, where you tell the story of your business and you ask for something at the end. It's always important to ask for something. Will we continue this discussion? Will we exchange emails? Can I offer you a sample? Do you buy this product? How can we do business? What's your specification? Ask a question, look for something, look for the next steps. Really important. Most people can tell the story quite well, but many of them forget to ask for something at the end. There are a few tips in there too for doing this well. Starting off strong. Let your belief shine through. Be a little bit different. That takes confidence, but you can do it. Make sure that you do good communication habits, like repeating the information, telling the story. Sometimes when we're selling, we feel the pressure a little bit. Sometimes when we're selling, we tend to feel as if we're doing something that's unusual or uncomfortable. If you think about it differently, if you think about it as telling rather than selling, in other words, you're telling the story, presenting the story, rather than trying to push the person in front of you to make a decision, it's much easier. And in that way, it's also much easier to let your own belief in what you're doing shine through. So really important to get this right. These are tips from various experts in sales and in presentation. And I just dragged them together into this short slide in order to give you an idea of how really good salespeople tell their story. And there are a few more there, but we've talked about this before, and those slides are there. I wanted to bring it in today because I want you to please consider how you present your business. It's really, really important how you present your business, how you tell the story of that business, what you see as the really important factors. So going to Gulfood, we need to do some basic things in summary of what we've been talking about. We need to prepare well, and we've talked about materials. We've talked about brochures, product sheets, specifications, business cards. And we've talked about contacting clients or potential clients using direct communication, using social media, and using the Gulfood website. We've talked about having a plan for the fair. It can be a simple plan, but there should be a plan. We've talked about communication, presenting your company, telling the story, listening well, greeting well, looking for the reaction, and reacting to that. We've talked about the use of social media. And don't forget, I didn't mention it today, but I mentioned it before. Don't forget the Gulfood app is there. It's quite effective, and it's very helpful when you're at the fair because you can look at your phone, find out where someone is, find your way back to your own stand. Whatever it is you want to do, you can do it on the app, and it's really good from that point of view. Also move around, do go and see other exhibitors. Do make sure that you research that before you go to the fair. Do make sure that you're ready. And finally, follow up. And that's really important. And this is where so many people fail. I think the statistic is 80% of meetings are never followed up on. What a waste. So it's a good opportunity. I'm hoping that you will enjoy it, that you will do well at it. And I'll just conclude by saying that we're more than happy to help you if you want to have any discussions about any aspect of Gulfood or any other part of business either. Make an appointment, and the ITC team, including myself, will be more than happy to discuss any issues. So that's it for today. That's it for our 3 webinars. I'm looking forward to talking to you. If anyone's got any comments or questions, more than happy to hear them now, or you can ask them later, drop an email, whatever suits you. I will just say thanks very much. Wish you all the very best of luck in your preparation. Wish you all the very best at Gulfood, and it's been my pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Дякую, Джиме, за
Thank
презентацію.
you, Jim, for your presentation.
Якщо в когось є якісь питання, пов'язані з організацією поїздки, будь ласка, можете запитати, я зможу відповісти на них. Якщо наразі у вас питань нема, то тоді ми зустрічаємося з вами вже в Дубаї. Все ж таки, я рекомендую приїхати на виставку і підготувати своє місце 12-го ввечері. Про час давайте домовимось раніше. На жаль, є компанії, які приїжджають пізніше, вони починають там готуватися, і ось ті фото, які зробив Джим, вони якраз були зроблені, коли вже почалися, і деякі фото там, здається, були, коли почали вже, виставка почала працювати, а деякі компанії, вони розкладали зразки і все таке інше. Тому давайте будемо поважати всіх і один одного в тому числі, і все ж таки приїхати трошки раніше, знайти цей час, дістатися і все ж таки організувати своє робоче місце заздалегідь. Щодо самої виставки Gulfood, частина компаній є, які вже я бачу зараз присутні, вони вже були минулого року, з нами. Тому ви знаєте ці вимоги, знаєте, що вони там дійсно підходять, вони підходять, спостерігають, вони підходили до нас як до організаторів, робили зауваження. Минулого разу нам не виписали штрафи, це дуже добре, ми справилися. Цього разу в нас вперше буде такий великий стенд, тому що раніше ми все ж таки мали меншу площу. Наразі буде 60 квадратів і 15 компаній, тому це такий челендж для всіх, щоб організувати свою роботу і виглядати, скажімо так, да, дуже репрезентативно. Ось так, да, Джим зробив, повернувся на слайд, ось так виглядає наш стенд. Фото вже Аня кидала в групу, де хто знаходиться. Місця для спілкування небагато, тому що організатори вимагають зберігати дистанцію, тому ви бачите лише 2 столи, які знаходяться ось посередині, і ще один стіл, він знаходиться за кутком, за надписом Ukraine, там де Ukraine Now. Там є ще один стіл і 2 стільці. Так, Джиме, він знаходиться саме там біля, скажімо так, біля кімнати для зберігання речей. Тому я буду присутня там, буду також там, да, якщо виникнуть якісь питання, щось буде незрозуміло, будь ласка, звертайтеся. Ми намагалися врахувати всі ваші прохання, але, на жаль, звичайно, тому що в нас колективний стенд, у нас є певні обмеження, тому ось таким чином ми зберегли максимальну кількість компаній, які могли приймати участь, але при цьому, звичайно, будуть існувати обмеження на присутність на стенді для людей. У нас було багато питань щодо зразків. Я не знаю, зараз це актуально чи не актуально для всіх, хто залишився.
А что вы имеете в виду по зразкам?
Он же ответил, он сказал, что можно брать.
Ні,
Такого.
як довести зразки. Значить, це компанії, які залишилися, вони вже, скажімо так, да, вони вже всі присутні знають, да, тому що були деякі компанії, але в них зараз вже наприкінці нашої зустрічі я їх не бачу. Ну добре, тоді вже будуть індивідуально запитувати і все таке інше. Так, зразки можна брати, але там як їх привести, там які вимоги, все таке інше, тобто ви вже це знаєте, я це омину. З приводу тестування, будь ласка, врахуйте час, який необхідно для того, щоб відбути цей карантин, тому що минулого разу 2 компанії не були присутні на стенді на відкритті виставки там протягом декількох годин, тому що вони не отримали результати тесту. Будь ласка, враховуйте це і приїжджайте заздалегідь до Дубаїв, плануйте так, щоб у вас було достатньо часу, щоб отримати результати тесту. Ми теж дуже хвилюємося, тому що ми як організатори несемо відповідальність за групу, тому я завжди запитую, чи все добре, чому люди відсутні і все таке інше. Тому, будь ласка, плануйте свою зустріч, свою поїздку. Крім того, в нас є питання щодо бейджів. Бейджі ви маєте отримати на пошту. Поки що, я знаю, ще не отримали. Ми ще почекаємо декілька днів. Да, і наступного тижня, якщо ви не отримуєте бейджів, ми будемо зв'язуватися з організатором, щоб ми це теж зробили заздалегідь, тому що, можливо, прийдеться показувати там бейдж на кордоні. Можливо, я не знаю. Колись в мене такі питали причина візиту і просили надати документи додаткові, що я їду саме на Gulfood. Кому потрібні листи підтримки, що пояснюють мету візиту до Дубаїв і що ви везете якісь зразки, будь ласка, звертайтеся до Ані, вона вам підготує. Можливо, трошки не одразу, тому що вона зараз знаходиться на місії з міжнародним консультантом, але в будь-якому випадку пишіть, кому потрібно щось. З приводу зустрічей, ще є, нагадаю ще раз, є ще декілька днів, щоб поспілкуватися індивідуально щодо підготовки, плану підготовки Які питання вас хвилюють щодо специфіки ринку, щоб можна було поспілкуватися індивідуально з Джимом. Він готовий надати допомогу з цього приводу. Ну і якщо в когось є якісь питання, будь ласка, задавайте. Якщо ні, можемо закінчувати тоді зустріч.
Дякую, Альоно. Питань, в принципі, немає. Джим все, як завжди, розкрив тематику дуже гарно і всім все зрозуміло.
Так, дякую, Володимире. Ну, це не для вас новина, ви вже не перший рік приймаєте участь в виставці, тому так, звичайно, для вас це все знайоме. Дякую, що знайшли час. І ще раз про це все це прослухали.
Ну, воно зрозуміло, але умови весь час змінюються. От, наприклад, упакування того ж самого товару, тобто воно, продукції тієї виставкової, воно ж по-різному було. Минулого року взагалі її не варто було брати, якщо пам'ятаєте. Тобто, зрозуміло, але деякі зміни все ж таки відбуваються. Дякую.
Так, я спілкувалася з колегами, які знаходяться безпосередньо в Дубаях. Вони сказали, що обмеження є, але, звичайно, люди почуваються себе трошки більш вільно, можливо, не всюди вони це, не всюди можуть одягати маски, але штрафи є. Тому ніколи не знаєш, тому, будь ласка, відносися до цього так уважно, тому що штрафи в Еміратах, вони чималенькі. Не хотілося б, щоб ви там потрапили в такої неприємної ситуації. Тобто ось так. Добре, тоді з вами до зустрічі. Всім здоров'я. Дякую, гарного вечора.
Спасибо. До свидания, до встречи.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alexandra.
Так, до побачення.